All right, so we are back, and today we're doing a breakdown of UFC 298's main event for the I'm still sick, so my voice is sounding a little odd. But for the featherweight belt, Alexander Volkanovski defending against Ilia Topuria. I don't even know if that's the right accent because he's Georgian, so if I mess it up, I mess it up. And just like in UFC 296's breakdown that we did, today's video is sponsored by EA Sports UFC 5. They're going to help me get more interactive with this breakdown and show you guys the true in-game mechanics that can replicate real life and what may happen in this title fight. And it doesn't stop there. I will be live this Saturday for UFC 298. And that stream will also be sponsored by UFC 5. We're going to play some games, have a fun time, and break down the entire UFC 298 card. I'll see you guys there, but before we get there, let's get a little deeper. Pause into UFC 298's main event for the featherweight title. Alexander Volkanovski, Ilia Topuria. What are my predictions? What do I think happens? Well, the breakdown. Let's go. All right, so this main event is a tricky one because there are a lot of scenarios that can happen in this fight, and they're all based off their own individual scenarios. So let's talk about each individual fighter. We know the champion, Alexander Volkanovski, 26-3, regarded as one of the best strikers in MMA to this day. Has had big-time performance after big-time performance. The defenses at 45, going up, challenging Islam the first time, making it a very close fight, but unfortunately getting knocked out even quicker the second time. We'll come back to those two losses in a second, but you get out of Alex Volkanovski some of the best variety of striking you will see. Honestly, some of the best variety in MMA you will see. He does mix up the wrestling a bit, but it's mostly targeted attacks with his hands, with his feet, with his knees, to the head, body, and legs. Out of the challenger, Ilia Topuria is, again, an interesting character. I think that's the best way to put it. He has got this aura around him, like, dare I say, a 2015 era Conor McGregor, at least in the confidence realm. Maybe not the star power realm yet, but he is becoming a big star. Little by little, with the performances and the notoriety in at 26 years old, or 27 now, I guess. He's got everything in front of him. 14-0, got ridiculous power in his hands, great boxing technique, which we'll talk about in a second. Good wrestling as well, got a Greco-Roman background. So it is a little bit of a conflicting style match, but one that I'm super interested in. So let's talk about how each guy wins. Let's talk about the champion, Alexander Volkanovski, coming off the loss to Islam Makhachev, but then wins versus Yair Rodriguez, big time win there, and then comes back and loses to Volkanovski again in even worse fashion. You're talking about a TKO stoppage, head kick. And a lot of people are worried about the fact that he's coming back this quickly. Like, I don't think it's that necessarily quick, but you do have November, December, January, and we're here February. 4 months later, and the fact that he accepted the Islam fight on short notice when he wasn't in the greatest shape. How do those two conflating factors lead to this fight? And let's not forget that the 35-year-old curse is in play for Alexander Volkanovski. He's not the youngest guy in the world. You get above that age in MMA, it seems like your career, especially for champions, starts to go downhill a little bit. You can't maintain that high-level fighting ability for that long. But with all that being said, the X's and O's of the fight may tell a different story. So even when we go back to the Yair Rodriguez fight, or even the Max Holloway fight, you ask yourself, what was Alexander Volkanovski able to do in those fights, and what can he do to Ilia Topuria? Because he's not the same guy as those two, but what Alexander Volkanovski, I think, does better than anyone is the variety in which he strikes. He loves to pepper his jab. His lead hand is active pretty much the entirety of the fight. Super active with his lead hand. That will set up his right hand. It will set up his kicks, and that's another thing. And a big key that I want to focus on is Alexander Volkanovski's jab leading to his leg kick, and vice versa. He has to attack the lead leg of Ilia Topuria because Topuria is such a lean, heavy on the lead foot style fighter. You could think Conor McGregor-esque, the way he puts a lot of weight on that lead foot and doesn't check a lot of those kicks. In the Josh Emmett fight, even though Topuria was pretty dominant there, I think Josh Emmett did go 7 for 7, 8 for 8, something like that with his leg kicks. He was able to get to that lead leg pretty much at will. And we all know Josh Emmett, not necessarily the biggest leg kicker, but Volkanovski is, and he's targeted with it to the calf, inside out, chew up the lead leg. You take a bit of that power, a bit of the sting and the movement off of a guy like Ilia Topuria, who does like to be forward and stay in your face and get his head off center line while keeping a lot of weight on that lead leg. I think it's going to be key for Volkanovski. If he's going to want to retain that belt, he has to be able to chew up that lead leg. And off that, we talk about the jab. Volk staying active with his jab. Being able to put that in the face of Ilia Topuria is going to be key because Ilia does like to move his head a lot. And it's not by a big margin, but it is pretty much always moving, which you don't see a lot of guys moving their heads super much because of the worry of high kicks and things like that. But again, if you want to set up some of your offense outside of the leg kicks, when that leg starts to get chewed up, the other method Ilia likes to use defensively is strictly his head movement and counter off. Head movement and hands off counter and throw behind it. So I think those two things are going to be a massive factor for Alexander Volkanovski. And again, I keep coming back to the leg kicks, but there's such a big factor. Another reason for that is because Ilia will, in some spots in the fight, in my opinion, look to change levels and blast a double leg on Volkanovski. But again, if his lead leg is a bit compromised from those kicks, it might be a little bit more difficult to do that. And Volkanovski, obviously a guy that's got ridiculous grappling in his own right, could use an opportunity like that off a desperation double or a double leg to stop some of those leg kicks to change the momentum of a fight, and then work his takedown defense and or reverse that position, hit a switch, get on top, start throwing ground and pound down. Volk can do a ton of things in that scenario. I'd like to see Volk take advantage of the fact that Ilia sometimes does drop his hands as well when he wants to exchange, and he does like to exchange a lot. Those hands will fall from his face, and Ilia has been cracked before. In the Jai Herbert fight, he got caught with a head kick, and it damn near knocked him out. Now, granted, Jai Herbert, not the same size, build, or frame as Volkanovski, sitting at 5'5" there. But the point is, in the pocket, there's not many guys better than Volkanovski, especially when he wants to start going variety. Maybe he does throw a head kick up there out of nowhere, but more so than that, just being able to be more accurate, more precise in those moments where Topuria does like to unload heavy shots and those hands start to fall by his waist. I think that's another key. If you can catch Topuria being a bit reckless and sitting down, throwing massive power when he doesn't have to, those are spots, once again, I think Volk can take advantage with his jab to set up his right hand, to set up his body attack, and also chop at the lead leg. All in all, I see Volkanovski doing, if he's going to win this fight, I see him doing kind of what he does to everyone and just wear you down methodically through the fight to the point where we're in like a round 4, round 5, and Topuria's face is all beat up and he's been tagged with jabs and his lead leg is chewed up and it's got swelling and bruising, and then all of a sudden Volkanovski starts introducing level changes, maybe gets a takedown, body lock, something, and then that ground and pound. I could see Volkanovski winning a late stoppage here. That's 100% possible to me. In fact, I wouldn't even call it surprising that Volkanovski round over round could methodically get busier and busier as this fight goes on. Again, there's so many factors. We're about to talk about him with Ilia in a second, but that's one way I could see Volkanovski winning. I could also see him winning a decision as well. But then you have the challenger, Ilia Topuria, which, again, this is a guy that's 27 years old, 14-0 in the game. Now, those numbers don't mean anything, especially when you're talking about Volkanovski, because he's already taken down young guys, old guys, doesn't matter who. Everyone in that 45-pound division that is challenged for the throne has been pushed back. And he just did it to one of the best strikers at 45 about 6 months ago, and Yair Rodriguez, a guy that possessed a lot of the skills you would think could rival a guy like Alexander Volkanovski. Really heavy kick, guy with a flashy style, but also technically sound and smart. And he got outstruck in that fight. Like, it wasn't that Yair got wrestled to the mat and got held down for 5 rounds or something. No, he got outstruck by Volkanovski, a masterclass there. So he can deal with young guys with good striking. What makes Ilia Topuria different, in my opinion, is the fact that it's purely boxing. And I think that sometimes you get a bad rap for guys that use mostly their hands. In a mixed martial arts sport, relying on 1 or 2 of those aspects sometimes will get you caught with something serious. But for Topuria, it works because his fights tend to be exactly where he wants them to be. And in this case, exactly where Volkanovski wants it to be as well, in the pocket. He breaks all barriers of range by staying very close to you pretty much the entirety of the fight, in your face, walking you down, staying in front, and looking to land bombs with his hands to the body, ripping, and changing levels, coming upstairs with overhands and hooks, and they are with devastating power. So in this fight, you're going to see him do a lot of the same things, but I think it will be more composed than maybe you've seen him in other fights. Round 1 will be a very much feeling out process. Again, you can't wait too long to get going with Volkanovski because he will start chewing up that lead leg. I do see Topuria getting right in the face of Alexander Volkanovski and trying to make reads by, again, using that head movement we talked about earlier. And as soon as Alexander Volkanovski throws the thing that I was talking about, whether it's the low leg kick or the jab, Topuria is a switch. He will flip and counter right hand, counter left hook right hand, counter jab right hand. He's done that to pretty much everyone he's fought. If you throw something, especially a jab, he's looking to come over the top with the right hand immediately. It's like he wants to throw on your throw. Floyd Mayweather style, Conor McGregor, trigger go, right? You've bait out the shot, and as soon as it flies out, boom, you're back over the top with the right hand. And in those instances, you find when he lands with devastating power. He's the only guy I've ever seen make Josh Emmett look the way he did, outside of maybe Lil Heathen Stevens. Actually saw that fight live. Shout out to Orlando, Florida. But outside of that, the domination that you saw in the Josh Emmett win, it was 50-45, 50-44 in some cases, complete, utter destruction. Wobbled him a couple of times as well. But it's not just that you get from Ilia. It's not just big power in his hands, because that's not going to be enough to beat Volkanovski. I think you got to go back through the stuff that he was doing before he got to the UFC, some of his submission wins and Cage Warriors. The guy has a great grappling game as well that may come into play when you talk about two predominantly heavy strikers. What's going to make the difference, especially for a guy like Topuria that doesn't kick? It may be that level change, blast the double leg, put the champ on the mat, and see what you can do from there, right? Again, let's see if you can work your submission game. How much can you surprise that champion with an aspect of your game he doesn't know? I'm talking about a guy with a Greco-Roman background as well, but I do think it all starts off of the reads of Ilia Topuria, his head movement being off center line, and countering off when he makes you miss. He makes you pay. I feel like, I know this is going to sound crazy of me, I just feel like in one or two instances, Volkanovski, as much as he is volume heavy on his lead hand, he's very much high volume with his jab, and he is looking to leg kick, which I think are two great things. But I think that Topuria is willing to take some of those leg kicks, right? Even get that leg chewed up to a degree to stand in the pocket, make the reads, look for that jab, look for whatever he wants to see, whatever thing he's trained to see, and go, all right, that's where I can catch him. And I think it's going to be the jab. I think that Volkanovski is going to continue to pop that jab out. Not that he does it lazily, because he never does. But at some point, Topuria is going to get off center, and that right hand is going to trigger behind it. I can see Topuria hurting him and putting him away. I think that genuinely, this is going to shock a lot of people, even though I am seeing a little bit of a Topuria wave right now, which happens during fight week. But I think that Volkanovski is going to have a great fight plan, is going to start this fight out really well, win the first round, probably the first couple. And at some point, in my opinion, he's going to see where that jab is coming from. He's going to take some leg kicks. But when you throw those leg kicks, you do open up lanes down the middle, over the top, or the counter shots coming back. And I think at some point, he's going to land right hand over, left hand to the body, right hand back over. I think it's going to wobble the champ. And honestly, I think that he's going to put Alexander Volkanovski away here. And I know that sounds crazy, and I'm honestly feeling blasphemous for saying it. I'll probably be completely wrong. But that's one way I can see this fight going, and honestly, if I'm making my prediction now, that's the way I see this fight going. I think Ilia Topuria beats Alexander Volkanovski, not just because of the 35-year-old curse, although it is a big deal. And again, coming off a loss like a head kick knockout, you got to wonder how Volkanovski recovers from that. I'm not saying he can't, because it's been done before, but coming back to 45 after that loss, it wasn't like it was a decision loss where he was, you know what I'm saying, right there in it. His confidence is going to be tested there, right? After that kind of dominant loss, when you come back to your division and an up-and-coming fighter with good striking and a lot of forward pressure, a lot of the same things he saw with Islam Makhachev in a different way, of course. But I think this might be the time. Either that or Volkanovski's just going to show us once again he's one of the greatest featherweights that's ever lived. Turn down another young up-and-coming challenger. And then I turn to you guys and go, yeah, well, I'm an idiot. I should have seen that coming. But I'm going to say it now. Ilia Topuria wins by stoppage. They put the belt around his waist, and a new reign starts at 45. Could be wrong, but thank you once again to EA Sports UFC 5 for sponsoring this video and helping me give you guys the tools to see what it is that I think happens, visualize and attack this thing, and giving the best gameplay, mechanics, and engine in all of combat sports. Play as Alexander Volkanovski in UFC 5, now available for 40% off during the pay-per-view weekend. The link is in the description. Volkanovski take him into deep water and stop him? Does Topuria use his boxing style, his combinations, his counter ability off of Volkanovski's lead hand to put him down and take his belt? I don't have those answers, but guess we'll find out.